Okay, you're going to create a text that bounces as well as squashes and stretches. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and set up our first layer. We're going to try and rename our layer. So right now it's layer 1, but since you're going to have several letters here, you're going to go ahead and type your first layer name. Since mine's going to say bounce, I'll name it B for bounce. Click on the text tool, erase the text that's there, type the B for bounce, select that B, and then I want to pick a font that's kind of strong but also has like a flat baseline. So maybe 175, maybe push it up to 200 even. All right, so I'm going to hit make button for this, and you're going to want to do that for every one of your letters. And I'm going to move it, go ahead and move it off the stage, just above the stage. And I'm also going to notice what it says in the inspector here, kind of the location, my X and Y coordinates. And they're kind of an odd number right now, 107.143. That makes it a little hard to kind of remember. So I might put in some clean numbers. I'm going to try 100 here. And for Y, since it's all the way to the left, it's a negative number. I'll put in 175. That's pretty close to my number. Maybe a little higher, 185. Negative 185 might get us above the stage. I want to zoom in, grab my pan tool here and take a look, and it looks like I am above my stage. And that's the main thing. All right, so I recentered here. And we're going to go ahead and put our next letter in. So we have to add a new layer. So layer 2, since again I'm writing bounce here, I'll put an O for my next layer. Click on my frame here, select the type tool, and I'll type a capital O. Select that O. Again, picking the same font. Oh, I'm forgetting what my font size was. Was it 175, 185? Let me just verify that here. Put that in position, or at least close to it. Go back to my B, click on it. Looks like I'm gonna have to break it apart temporarily. Up 200. Click back on make button. And 200 is my new font size, and make button. All right, so I'm going to look at my B, and I'm going to try to remember what my Y was, because that's the up and down. My Y was negative 185, so I'm going to go ahead and type negative 185. So I know that the up and down position is exactly the same. Left and right, you're going to have to kind of estimate that. I'm going to click another layer, and this layer, I'm just going to call it line, because this is where my ground is going to be. It's where my letters are going to hit. I'm going to click the frame 1, click my line tool, and increase the size of my line just so it's something that can be seen. That looks like it'll be fine. Just going to make sure I draw it all the way across. It can go beyond the stage. Make it fairly straight here. And let's extend our frames. You'll probably extend them more than this, but for now I'll just extend the line all the way out to 30, as well as my other two layers, my B and my O. It just makes them visible all throughout the animation. I'm going to select my B, and I want it to tween all the way down, but I don't want to just move it with my mouse because the left and right is not easily controlled. I want it to go straight down, and Shift key does not keep it from moving left to right. So first I'm going to add my tween. I'm going to move my timeline forward here to frame 10. I'm going to select my B, but I'm going to hold the Shift key down but use the arrows, and it makes it go down faster. And now it makes it jump more, so if I want to get the fine tuning in, I just let go of the Shift key and use the arrows to get it so it's just kind of bumping into that line. And there's my first tween as my B falls to the ground. I'll hit play. There it is. Let's give it some room to do its first squash and stretch. I think we'll do 2. So maybe 2 frames in. 2 frames in, we'll have it do its next one. So I'm going to select it, and I'm going to look for a way to, like, not manually squash and stretches, but to actually use some numbers to keep it very consistent. Okay, so I'm just looking at my position right now just to see where it is. So I may use that for the next letters, maybe not, we'll see. But okay, so let's click on this and let's change my scale. So the height gets smaller, right, as it squashes. So I'll make it like 0.8, and my width will get wider, so I'll make it 1.2. Similar. I know it's not exact for you math people out there, but unfortunately it shrinks from the center. So I'm going to use my arrows just to kind of fine tune it down so that it is hitting that line still. Okay, it's still hitting that line. Now we're going to want it to return to that same position, right? And I'm just looking right now to see if they're pretty much in the same spot here. Maybe I'll zoom in and just kind of look a little closer. It looks like it is close. I mean, we're zoomed in a lot. So even though it might not be perfectly on there, there we go. I moved it just a notch, one little keystroke down. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Nice little squash and stretch going on there. All right, I will move forward 2 more frames. I'm going to select that keyframe, Control C it, and then Control V to paste it so that I know I have the exact same original unsquashed, unstretched B when it returns to its normal state. Then I'll go ahead 2 more frames, select my B again. Now I'm going to have it squash again, but not as much this time. This is the second squash and stretch, right? So maybe I'll do the height at 0.9 instead of 0.8 and the width at 1.1 instead of 1.2. And then again, I move it down. Now the moving is what adds the keyframe in there. So I'm just kind of nudging it in place. Again, I'm zoomed in enough so I can see that. So now I have this nice squash and stretch, the first one being a little more than that second one. So just comparing my scales, and what I want to do is I want to make sure I'm consistent with all my letters, and I do the exact same thing with each one of those. I'm going to copy and paste my final B at the end here too, just to bring it back to its original shape at the very bottom there. All right, let's recenter. And basically we're repeating the same process with the O. We're going to add a tween. We're going to want our O to be where our B is. So once again, I'll hold the Shift key and the down arrow after I select my O and get it in position. I'll zoom in and just use the arrows only to get it to be right up against that line there. That looks good. I'm going to select that keyframe and I'm going to Control C, Control V, and Control V again because I already know I need 3 of them, right? Just like I did with the B. Then I'll go back and add the squash and stretch keyframes. At frame 12, I'll do the exact same sizes, 1.2 scale and the 0.8 scale. And then I'll move that O down with the arrows just to nudge it into place. Then I'll jump ahead to, frame 16, and I'll change the scale again. This is that squash and stretch part, but again, it's not going to be as much. It's going to be 1.1 and the 0.9. And then again, clicking on my O, I'll just nudge it back into place with the arrows needed this time. So I should have 2 very similar looking squash and stretches, which they do. They mimic each other. It wouldn't look good if they didn't squash and stretch equally. Let's hit play and see what that looks like. Very nice, looks very good. All right, so now I'm just taking a look at these and I'm thinking that maybe we should introduce a concept called easing. So if I just select that keyframe, not the actual letter, right? Because the letter doesn't allow me to make any changes over here. I'm looking over here wondering if I can do it from there. I have to actually select the keyframe. So if I come over here and I click on, for example, the B keyframe, at the very top right in the inspector, you'll see an easing type, and it's set by default to none, which means there's no easing, there's no speeding up, there's no slowing down. This thing just goes at a constant rate, right? It doesn't change. So I'm going to add an easing, and it's called easing in, and I want you to see what happens. Notice the B is a little slower, but it's catching up to the O. So easing in means it starts slow like a car and it accelerates to 100 miles an hour. Again, back to none, it's 100 miles an hour from the start to the finish. If I ease out, for example, it'll start at 100 and then it'll slow down like it's braking. Okay, so what I want is easing in, easing out. I want it to start at 0, get to 100, and then slow down to 0 again. And that's kind of the more natural look that we have here. And I'll do the same thing with the O keyframe. I'll just select it and then do easing in and out on that as well. Okay, now on my example, I staggered the letters. They didn't all fall at the exact same time. So if I select the O, all the keyframes for O, and I shift them over, all the frames I should say, to 5, now you've got my B, then my O following it, right? They both have the eases still, but now they're staggered. I'm just going to extend this a little more. There we go. And it's kind of up to you how much you want to stagger them. Notice that the first 4 frames or so, you don't have an O. You're missing your O because there's a blank frames there. So you need to actually select your O and then copy it, Control C, and then Control V to paste it into those first frames. Is it a big deal when it's off stage? No, but it may be possible that you had something on stage that you wanted to still be visible, and that's how you would do that. And there we go. And the only thing I can just think is now that after I've created this video, I would maybe change my easing to just be easing in for all my letters because, you know, as it's hitting the ground, it's probably hitting the ground at full force. It's like a car smashing into a wall. It's not, you know, maybe, you know, that's not being a brake. There's no brake being applied, but I think that's up to you. At the very least, you want to have easing in, but you can also have easing out as well. It depends on the effect you're going for.